So I just want to let everyone know that I'm going to be standing in for like basically a representative from Messer's office. This is not my point of view that I'll be representing tonight. I'll be in character. I'm going to do my best to answer the questions mostly with direct quotes from Messer himself. We've done a lot of research on this. So we're going to use a lot of direct quotes from Messer. Where I can't use a direct quote, I'm going to be attempting to piece together an answer based on what we know of Messer.
I think we need to get started, folks. If everybody could have a seat. We're really happy to see so many people here. We've never done this before, so we didn't know if it would just be us or a room full of people, and we're really happy to see so many people. My daughter just surprised me. She drove from Athens, Ohio. She's always doing stuff like that. Where was I? We're happy to see so many people here. Tell you just a little bit, this is being put on by a group called Indivisible. A lot of people in here know about that because they're members. But for those of you who are not, we're just a group of concerned citizens who kind of sprung up out of nowhere after the most recent presidential election. You can imagine why that might have happened. We were very concerned about what's happening with our country. We invited Representative Messer to be here tonight. In fact, we invited him repeatedly. I myself called his offices, I'd say somewhere between 8 and 10 times. They, of course, never returned any of my calls. I did talk to a few human beings about that. I know that other indivisible groups here in the 6th District called Mr. Messer's office to invite him to a town hall, and none of them had any better luck with that than we did. There were a few of us who even drove down to Rushville, Indiana a month or so ago, 6 weeks, I forget. It was a while ago, where he was supposed to have a Saturday morning coffee. Some people had been to one earlier in the morning and said he was running about an hour late, but he was on his way. He didn't show up. And nobody ever contacted us to apologize. We called and contacted them. So basically, he has not responded to any requests for a town hall. I invited them again very recently, got transferred to his schedule, his scheduler, who suddenly was not in the office, and I never heard back from him. So Congressman Messer obviously doesn't want to deal with citizens who may not agree with his opinion on the issues. I think other people have had that experience. So we decided to go ahead and have this town hall without him. I would much prefer that he had been here, because there's some really serious issues that I personally, and I know many of you would like to have discussed with him. Things like health care, a woman's right to choose, Trump's taxes, the tax plan, the budget plan that's been proposed, the environment. There are a lot of really serious kind of life and death issues that I think anybody who's going to represent us ought to hear our opinions about and hear our questions. I really wanted to be able to discuss these issues with him directly. Well, we're proceeding without him, and there's one member of our group who is not yet up here. I think he may be ready to come in right now. Come on in. Now, this guy is Chicken Messer. And it's really interesting, even though Luke himself could not come, this is a clone of Luke Messer. Now, something went a little wrong in the cloning process. However, he thinks exactly like Luke, so it's the second best thing to having him here. So he will answer some of your questions, of course in chicken, because he doesn't speak English. But we're very fortunate to have a highly skilled linguist who can translate from chicken to English and who is highly skilled at speaking Messerese or Republicanese, whatever you want to call it. So we'll manage to do this without Luke and see how that goes. So do we have somebody who would like to ask the first question? Don't all speak at once. Yes, ma'am.
Wait for the mic. Here it comes.
Oh, yes, I forgot that. You need to wait for the mic and sort of stay toward the middle if you can when you ask a question.
All right.
You recently voted to reverse an FCC Privacy Act, allowing internet service providers to sell customer data to corporations. You received $18,000 for your vote. Is the privacy of the American people worth so little to you?
So Messer would like to inform you that he did vote yes on the prohibiting the FCC from regulating the rates of internet service providers charging their customers for a broadband internet service access. Messer believes that by regulating broadband rates, the FCC would be discouraging service providers, which would no longer be able to set their own prices. So this allowed people to take back a little bit of power from the FCC and help keep the internet free market.
It's not too, yeah.
With regard to privacy, I think Messer's office would just emphasize that maybe we are selling your search histories, but one thing that allows the company to do is to offer you special coupons that are individualized, so you can get a lot of really, really good deals.
So what do you guys think of that? Absolutely. You know, the reality of that situation is really, really interesting. Mr. Messer, Congressman Messer, Chicken Messer's daddy, seemed to not think that our privacy was very important. And as this young lady indicated, his vote seems to have gone with an over $17,000 contribution from Comcast. So he's not at all concerned about our privacy. Our internet stuff can go to the highest bidder or the lowest bidder, just whoever's got money to buy it. On the other hand, Mr. Messer voted against the release of Donald Trump's tax returns. And his rationale, absolutely, and his rationale for that was he wanted to protect Donald Trump's privacy.
Trump has a right to his privacy.
Me too.
So, Nick, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of figured that's the answer, I guess.
Okay. Does anybody have something they want to add to that? If not, next question. Yes, sir.
Should I stand in the center, or is it here okay? All right. Representative Messer, with a Title I classification of the internet, which is what the FCC proposed ruling would do, there is no safeguards for an ISP who would be taking all of this data about individuals to protect said data. How are you as a representative supposed to represent us if you're putting us in a position where our data is not only being made a commodity, but it's not safeguarded?
I think that Messer's office thinks that we could probably trust those corporations to protect our privacy. I think technology is getting better all the time in terms of safeguards.
That was an expensive $17,000 and something answer. Obviously, he's not concerned about safeguarding that information. So thank you for that question. Next question. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, wait up.
I'm sorry, Jane. There's the mic.
Since 97 to 99% of scientists have agreed that climate change is real and human caused, and since 60 to 70% of American citizens are concerned about this, want to do something about this, why have you consistently voted against support for renewable energy resources and against regulations for fossil fuels, which are the main cause of this? Increasing climate change, already we're seeing ice melting, flooding, storms, and droughts at a faster rate than the scientists earlier predicted. So what do you have to say about your votes on this?
Messer's been called a climate change denier, mostly because he's on record calling climate change a social issue. But that's mostly because he sees climate change as secondary to the main priorities facing Hoosiers, which include jobs, a thriving economy, and national security. I also have a statement from Messer on this. He says, "I believe Hoosiers know what's in their own best interests and that of their families better than any political leader in Washington, D.C., a politically motivated interest group, or a global organization unconcerned with preserving the American way of life. My constituents have told me these EPA regulations should be scrapped. I agree with their assessment."
Okay, that's kind of the typical Messer response to environmental issues. He talks about balance and a mix of economic development and environmental protections. It sounds really good. I mean, who doesn't want balance? That's a very Zen kind of thing. But the truth is, there's absolutely no balance in this man's voting record. He has voted against virtually every environmental protection law that's come before him since 2010. The League of Conservation Voters is an organization that has been advocating for and monitoring environmental concerns for decades. They rate legislators on their voting record on environmental issues. I was looking at some of that data just recently, and in 2016, on a score of 1 to 100, Messer got a score of 3. And I thought, gee, well, maybe that's an off year. So I looked at 2015, and his score was 0. His score was 0. He voted against every environmental proposal that there was. And I discovered a really interesting thing in looking at that data. They had the rating for the leadership in the House on both the Republican and the Democrat side. The average score for the House leadership, that included Messer, who's in charge of, I forget what, some committee. The House leader, the whip, the 5 main leaders in the House of Representatives on the Republican side, their average score on the environment for 2016 was 2. In 2015, it was 2. They're very consistent. On the other hand, now, Indivisible is a nonpartisan group. We have Republican members, we have independents, we certainly have Democrats. But the Democrat leadership in 2016, their score was 93. In 2015, it was 94. So, when people say there's not a difference between the two parties, all those politicians, all those lying politicians, they're all the same. Well, they're not. They're absolutely not. And Luke Messer does not take a balanced approach to the environment. He seems to be totally oblivious to climate change and the seriousness of that. And in that sense, I don't think he represents anybody in this room. So that's Luke Messer's story on the environment. We got, back here.
Representative Messer. President Trump has recently requested an increase of $54 billion to the Pentagon's $600 billion budget. This can only happen by drastic cuts to domestic spending. The Pentagon's own internal study shows that it wastes with essentially $150 billion, and that money could be saved by doing things smarter and changing their own process. Do you support the $54 billion increase? Wouldn't it be better for Congress just to make the Pentagon clean up its house and increase oversight?
Cuts to domestic spending are generally a good thing.
Do you guys agree with that?
Because cutting domestic spending allows us to cut taxes, and therefore gives greater freedom to all Americans because it allows us to spend our hard-earned money in whatever ways that we choose. Messer does support the increase in the Pentagon's budget because it's going to create jobs, especially through funding the defense industry, the weapons industry. That's a lot of jobs there. And yeah, again, I go back to trusting corporations to account for their money honestly.
Wow. Where do you start with that?
Can you shout loudly? Can you go ahead and shout your
Just go ahead and speak
I'm
up.
a kindergarten teacher.
All right.
I can shout. When you say that the military provides jobs, are you aware of the fact that for $100,000, every $100,000, the military provides $10,000 jobs? But for that same $100,000, you get 25,000 jobs if you put it in education.
That's a really good point.
Can I?
Sure, go right ahead.
You know, Messer is on the education committee, and he believes education is very important. In fact, the gateway to education is the gateway to opportunity in modern America. And we need more school choice.
Well, you know, I'm going to tackle the education piece of that first, and we can go back to the budget, hopefully. School choice. Representative Messer is probably the leader in the House of Representatives on school choice. He's been appointed to committees. He even got a $2,500 campaign contribution from Betsy DeVos. Absolutely. Yeah. So school choice is his big thing. And what that means, and what that has meant in the state of Indiana, is a very serious draining of resources from our public schools. There are 34,000 kids in Indiana now enrolled in voucher-supported schools. There's absolutely no evidence that their school performance has improved as a result of that. There's in fact some evidence that when kids transfer from public schools to private schools, their math scores go down. Their reading scores stay the same, but their math scores go down. Another interesting aspect of that issue is, and I found this really fascinating when doing the research on this, over 1/2 of the kids who are using vouchers to go to private schools have never even been in public schools. So, you know, this is often sold as a way to save those poor kids in the inner city who are going to bad schools. That isn't the way it works. Those vouchers are going to pay mostly to send middle-class kids private schools with our tax dollars.
Follow up.
Our own Notre Dame University did a study of the kids on vouchers from the schools in Indiana and discovered that, and I don't have the figure, but it's a very high percentage from those principals and those district superintendents, a very high percentage of those students went to those schools anyway before there were vouchers.
Yes.
We're just subsidizing the parents that were already paying that.
What do you guys think of that?
I have something to add to that, too. I was reading an editorial from the Indy Star. It's not real recent, but it goes back to when they gave this extension to this failing charter school for its third-year extension. According to the Indy Star, the cost of the money that we give to charter schools is like $7,000 something a student. The money that we give to public schools is like $6,000 something a student. So we're actually paying them more to go to the charter. We're paying the charter schools more than we're paying the public schools.
And requiring less of them.
Yes, one of the facts, go ahead.
I was going to say, 90% of the children in Indiana go to public schools.
I think the most recent numbers on the amount of money taken out of the public school system for this is $54 million. That's a substantial chunk of money. I'm sure our public schools could use that money. One other interesting thing about that is that in Indiana, the private charter schools, I just saw a report today, over half of them are performing poorly. They're either on this A to F grading scale they've got. Over 50% of them are getting F and D. Yeah, so that money is not being well monitored and well spent. and it's also being taken away from our public school system.
Can Messer's office comment on this?
Sure.
Because what Messer's office thinks needs to happen is we do need more school choice. You would have to admit the status quo is not working. So number one, we need more school choice. Number two, we need to reduce regulations on 529 education savings accounts. Are you familiar with the 529 education savings accounts? Right now, you can use them to save up for your kids' college education. But what we need to do is release that so that that money can also be used for K through 12. Okay? So you can invest, you can have a private account in the stock market where you can set up and save up money for your child to go through K through 12 and have a very quality private education. Okay,
You guys
so
think that's a good idea?
I really think that's one thing that needs to happen. And also, there's a thing called the Coverdale accounts. These are savings accounts that can already be used for K through 12. But they have a $2,000 cap on them. So I want to release, Messer's office wants to release the cap on that so families can contribute more than $2,000 a year to those savings accounts in the stock market. And that's really going to help Indiana families.
How is that going to help poor families who don't even have the money to save?
You got me there.
Why do you hate public education so much?
Just because it's not working. Just because it's
It's not working because you're underfunding it and cutting it off at the knees.
So
And you're,
Over-regulating it.
you aren't paying enough for your teachers aren't graduating.
Why do you hate public schools so much?
It's not that Messer hates public schools, it's just that Messer thinks that parents should have a choice.
Parents, that's a good point. Parents do have a choice. They absolutely have a choice. They can pay for it.
with what money?
Well, if they want to send their kid to a private school, they can pay for it.
If you can invest in one of these accounts that I want to have set up.
Kids to those schools.
Exactly. We shouldn't be spending taxpayer money to support private church-related education.
Well, that's why they should have these private accounts in the stock market. That would also relieve that problem.
The private accounts that Messer supports are really pretty much of a tax dodge. I mean, that money is coming out of tax revenues. They're sheltering it or writing it off from tax revenues. That's again taking away from the public to serve the private education sector, which I don't think we support in this room.
We have one back here and then one here.
I wanted to make a comment about public schools versus private schools. Look around you. When you drive home, look around you. Everything you see will be built by graduates of public schools.
There is another point to be made on this issue. The public school system, the free, tax-supported public school system in this country, has really been a basic cornerstone of our democracy. So to weaken that, to take resources away from that when the resources are already limited, serves the public very poorly.
Are these 529 educational savings accounts the same kind of accounts that you're calling for in the ACHA, the HSA accounts that require poor families to put money that they don't have into accounts that accrue interest on money that's not there? I asked because under the ACA that you repeatedly say in press releases doesn't work, even as recent as today in the Indy Star. Many people have received health care. I'm one of them. That same ACA allows me to receive life-sustaining medication. Under the ACHA, that same medication isn't covered. Can you explain to me how the support of the ACHA supports Indiana residences?
That's it. What do you got to say for yourself, chicken messer? Not much.
Messer's vote on May 4th to repeal and replace Obamacare. I have a statement here from Messer. Quote, is a step away from more government control of our health care and our day-to-day lives and a return to freedom for all Americans. Despite the rhetoric, the bill we passed in the House keeps protections for those with pre-existing conditions, which is exactly that's what we promised we would do. Under the American Health Care Act, insurance companies are prohibited from denying coverage or rescinding coverage on the basis of a pre-existing condition and are prevented from raising premiums on individuals with pre-existing conditions who maintain continuous coverage.
Yeah, we all know that's simply not true. The damage that would be done to the American people, especially vulnerable people like the elderly, people with significant illnesses, pre-existing conditions, women, you can go on, children, you can go on and on. The only people it really would help are the wealthy, who would get like a $600 billion tax cut. The upper 1%, everybody making over $250,000 a year. And of course, up and up and up from there. They all would get a big tax cut. And a lot of people have suggested that that's what this whole thing is about, that and trying to erase Obama's legacy. So, yeah, what do you think? So the Affordable Care Act does, or the repeal of it, and this new bill that they have introduced would do the following things. It would turn Medicaid into a block grant, which would allow states to kick lots of people off of their health care. It slashes Medicaid by $880 billion over 10 years. And Medicaid is not well funded already. It removes subsidies that the ACA helps to provide for middle income people to make health insurance affordable for them. It allows insurers to dramatically increase premiums for older patients, particularly older people prior to getting on Medicare, people from 50 to 64. I read that it would be at least 5 times higher than it is currently, which would just make it totally out of reach for most people. So people with pre-existing conditions would be in big trouble. It would be almost like it was before, when anybody with pre-existing condition couldn't get health insurance.
Only if they had a break in coverage, though.
Yes, that is true. If they've had a break in coverage, which would happen if you lost your job, or a plant closed, or
dropped ACA.
Right.
So the first year is going to be responsible for like 10 million of the 23 million lost coverage people, and almost all of them are going to be young males that don't have any other coverage. And when it comes time for them to when they do need coverage, they're going to find that, oh, you have a break in coverage, and so we can charge you whatever the hell we want.
Okay, but Messer was elected to repeal and replace Obamacare, so he is keeping his promise.
You know, that's an interesting thing. That Messer and that crowd think they got some sort of a mandate to take people's health care away from them, to take away food stamps, to take away the things that are sustaining many people in this country. I don't think the people of the 6th District of Indiana voted to have their health insurance taken away. I just can't believe that. You know, another really harmful thing that this act incorporates is that private insurers, like employers, which is where I think like 55% of people get their health insurance, are allowed to put yearly and lifetime caps on people's insurance. So if you had cancer and had expensive treatment, you would be good maybe for $100,000 or maybe even $1 million. But we know that that kind of treatment is extremely expensive, and when you were done, you would just have to die.
Are you saying that that's part of the new bill?
Yes.
That other insurance, like, okay.
Yes. They don't stop with Obamacare. They add this little gem into it, that private employers, where you're on a private plan, could put those caps on your care.
But we need to do that because that's one of the ways that Indiana stays competitive as a state, is by offering these kinds of things to employers and to the insurance industry. We need to keep them here. We have to offer things to keep them here.
That's of course just utterly ridiculous. The idea that it's helpful to people to take away their health insurance is totally absurd. Is totally absurd. There is no rational argument for it.
Thinning the herd.
Yeah. Thinning the
I've got a
herd.
question on a different topic, Mr. Messer. Trump promised that he'd create more manufacturing jobs for regular Americans. Now, I've lived in Indiana for a couple of years now, and I can see that factory jobs have been going down for years and years. Some of it's gone overseas, more of it's just been automated. So it seems to me to be a false promise to bring back manufacturing. The factories don't even need workers much anymore. We need training for 21st century jobs. I'm wondering what bills are in Congress that you're pushing that will really bring job training or 21st century jobs to Indiana people who need better jobs.
Thank you for that question. As you know, Congressman Messer is on the Education Committee. He joined President Trump for the signing of his executive order to target federal education overreach in April. We need to bring the education system into the 21st century and give locals control. Our schools, our teachers, and our administrators are buried under a one-size-fits-all federal regulations that in many cases do more harm than good. We need to identify the outdated and overreaching rules that are restricting local educators and stifling innovation. And that's how we're going to get the jobs of the 21st century, by having an education system of the 21st century.
What do you guys think of this? Utter nonsense. A bunch of blah, blah, blah to really distract from the question. And the question was, what have you done to promote job creation for the 21st century? And the answer, as you can probably tell from this response, is basically nothing. Yes, sir.
Silicon Valley is going to West Virginia on their own to train coal miners that they know will never get a job again in gold mines.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That was one of Donald Trump's big points, and that, of course, is a big position that Messer takes. That the coal industry is the future for energy in Indiana.
It is. It is.
Stoltz has even said there is no future here.
Yes, absolutely.
We have to keep coal in Indiana. That's what keeps our electricity rates so low. That's what keeps Indiana a competitive state and attracts
Now,
businesses
if
here.
Republicans would vote solar out of the picture.
Yeah, that's a really good point. This is a really important issue. This doesn't directly involve Messer, but it involves the way he thinks about this problem. In the last Indiana meeting of the Indiana legislature, there was a bill passed, Senate Bill 309, which in effect stifled the development of the solar industry in the state of Indiana by cutting off what they call net metering, which means when you've used up the solar at your place, you can sell it to the utility company. They voted to stop that. It's a little ways down the road, and they grandfathered some people, but basically they voted to stop that. That's in a state, the state of Indiana. This is just an astounding thing I discovered in doing a little research for this. The state of Indiana has the worst air quality in the country. We rate number 50. We are the number one you do not want to be. Our water quality is 42nd in the country. And so in the face of that, Mr. Messer has voted against the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Power Plants. He's voted against every environmental protection that helps us have a sustainable planet and a healthy environment. We in Indiana are already suffering, and he wants to weaken any environmental protections that we have.
Why would manufacturers want to come to a state like this?
Cheap electricity. And the right to work law, that's very
Exactly.
important.
They can pollute much more easily here.
Low pay is also very important.
Yeah. That leads us to another issue, doesn't it? Yes, ma'am.
Another environmental question related to jobs, and that is fracking. And Representative Messer, you've claimed that the Dakota XL pipeline would create thousands of U.S. jobs and help the U.S. become less dependent on Middle East oil. Yet, the U.S. Department of State and the pipeline builder, TransCanada, say that only 5,000 to 6,000 jobs, temporary jobs, and only about 50 long-term jobs would be created. Also, this oil is going to be pumped over land, endangering our people and environment, and it will not be used in the U.S., but be sold on the international market so that overseas oil companies reap profits. Why haven't you told the truth about this?
Okay, on the question of jobs, Messer would emphasize that the jobs associated with the pipeline are not just construction jobs. They're also manufacturing and transportation, utilities, and agriculture jobs associated with the pipeline. So the pipeline will create jobs and lower costs for hardworking Hoosiers. The pipeline will ensure transport of 830,000 barrels of oil per day to the Gulf Coast and Midwest refineries from Canada. And this means an additional $3.5 billion to U.S. GDP. On the questions of safety and the environment, I would say that the pipeline also means increased safety for the industry, as pipelines are by far the safest mode of transportation for crude oil.
Do you guys believe that?
Crude oil and natural gas. And the pipeline will result in significantly failure to build the pipeline will result in significantly higher greenhouse gas emissions.
Where do you start with that?
Isn't this really about the Coke money that you get and why it is you refuse to support any regulation on the oil and gas company because you give billions of dollars from the Koch brothers?
Yes.
What I have read in the news recently, the Keystone Pipeline has already had 2 leaks. How is that?
So that's job creation, including.
The only real jobs that'll create is the cleanup crews that have to do with those leaks.
Companies don't have to pay for it.
Yeah. Yeah, the point that was made about the lack of job creation associated with that pipeline is quite true. Most of that oil is the dirtiest oil that we have. It's coming mostly down from Canada, those tar sand oils, and they're filthy, dirty. They're bad environmentally. The only good news, I suppose, for our country is that most of that stuff's going to go down south and be exported to other countries. It's mostly not coming to the United States, which is probably a good thing for us because it's really dirty oil.
So we don't care about other countries.
We do. I'm just saying, that at least it's going somewhere else. We're not going to burn it and further pollute our environment.
I am wondering, Mr. Messer, I started calling your offices right after the election to see about, when and where there might be a town hall. Have you had any town halls anywhere in the district since your election?
I had a town hall in Shelbyville. It was a meet and greet in Shelbyville.
That's right. All Luke Messer has had is some little meet and greet things in small coffee shops. He had one in a bakery in Muncie a while back that didn't have much room for anybody to be at. Since he was elected in 2010, he has had no town halls.
But that's mostly because he's focusing his efforts on running for the Senate seat in Indiana. So I can't really focus on the district right now. I'm thinking about the whole state.
That's really true. We he got too hot in that. We went to a demonstration on the health care bill down in Shelbyville a month or so ago, a few of us in this room. And we asked the people there, said, do you have any interaction with Messer? His office is right there in Shelbyville. We were having our demonstration right in front of it. And they said, I was thinking they'd say, well, yeah, we see him around town and stuff like that. And they said there hasn't been a Messer sighting in Shelbyville in quite some time. And they said they didn't even know if he still lived there. Well, the truth is he doesn't. He sold his house. He doesn't even live in the 6th district. The district he supposedly represents.
Where does he live?
He lives in Virginia, a wealthy suburb of Washington, D.C. He doesn't live here.
He has no Indiana residence?
His voting address is at his wife's family's house in Greensburg.
I live in Virginia, so I don't miss votes.
Yeah. He doesn't live there. He doesn't live in the 6th district, the district that he represents.
No way of knowing what we feel like.
You'd do better for us if you missed the votes.
Wonderful. We've got time for 1 or 2 more questions unless you guys are tired of us already. Okay, let's
keep it rolling.
Yeah. We'll go as long as you want to, but we don't want to bore people.
My question centers on the reversal for the decision to ban for purpose. My question centers on the reversal on the ban for purpose, a widely used agricultural pesticide. How is it that sound science in decision making from, according to Scott Pruitt, is it that this is okay for the health and well-being of our citizens, our wildlife, our water, our environment?
Yeah, her question is a really good one. The Environmental Protection Agency, or Trump on an executive order, I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but they reversed a decision that we couldn't use this pesticide that has been a proven carcinogen, a very bad one. I don't remember the name of it. I'm not that smart. Okay, whatever. But it's a very toxic chemical, and it was reversed on the basis of no scientific recommendation. I think it's a...
When Trump signed the executive office, the executive order, Dow Chemical's president was standing right next to him.
Yeah, it's a Dow Chemical. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes, and I think it's internationally banned. I think it's only here that it's being allowed.
Messer's office doesn't have a comment on that. I researched on that, could not find any statement whatsoever on that.
Representative Messer, I was born and raised in Indiana. I am the child of 2 refugees who came to this country, one from a predominantly Muslim country. Where do you stand on the travel ban and people and anchor babies like me?
On the travel ban, I do support that. It's a measure to protect Americans from terrorist threats. And President Trump is right to prioritize American safety.
Do I look like I could take down this room?
Wow. Yes, ma'am.
What would President Trump have to do for you to finally stand up to him?
One issue that you've disagreed with him on?
No,
there was a
there is
continuing
not.
resolution.
There hasn't been one significant issue that Luke Messer has disagreed with Donald Trump on. Not one. He made sort of a halfway attempt during the campaign when Trump was assailing that Hispanic Judge Curiel, I think his name.
Judge Curiel.
He said something about Trump acting like an adult, but then...
He said this.
Oh, okay, he said this. I think one of the real unknowns is Donald Trump has... Or is it? Oh, my. Yeah. Yeah. He says, well, he's hired people of merit throughout his career. Yeah, that too. But he did wonder if he had the maturity that he really should have for being in that position.
And now I think he does.
Yes. There's been no criticism since of anything. In fact, just recently, when he fired Comey, who was investigating him over the Russian interference with our election and possible collusion, he said of that that basically Comey was doing a bad job, and we should not jump to any conclusions.
Yes, there was a broad consensus criticizing Comey's poor performance on his job.
Yeah, which the really interesting thing about that is, of course, it's absolutely not true. And it was only 10 days, 2 weeks before that Donald Trump was singing Comey's praises. But then something happened. Something happened.
So to answer your question, I do reserve judgment. If there comes a time where I need to speak out against President Trump, I won't hesitate to do that, but I haven't seen anything so far. I haven't seen anything so far that would give me cause.
That's a good question, too. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm a teacher, so obviously this is going to be educational questions. So, Luke Messer, recently in the news, Lighthouse Christian Academy was brought up basically nationwide because apparently they're allowed to, I guess, discriminate against families who have
LGBT.
Yeah, so I just wondering why they are able to accept taxpayer money and be able to discriminate, basically deny admission to those students whose family members who are associated with that. Whereas in public school, we're basically told we need to accept everyone, doesn't matter what background, socioeconomic. Just curious why they are allowed to have that discretion and we can't as public school teachers. So, just curious.
Yeah, of course, I'm not in favor of any kind of discrimination, but I would defer to our Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos.
By the way, she's not my boss, by the way.
Your question's a really good one. One of the things I discovered in doing this research is that indeed the private charter schools are allowed or have been allowed to discriminate against LGBT people. We also know that they take a disproportionately low percentage of students who have special needs. Those schools are obviously cherry picking the students that they want.
They take no students that have discipline problems.
They do not take students who have discipline problems. So what we would see if this trend continues and Betsy DeVos is trying to make it national, the voucher thing, she's trying to make a national federal thing, is that our public schools would increasingly have these much more difficult students to teach and manage
With fewer resources.
and less money to do it with.
Actually, can I add on real quick?
Yes.
I do have a question for him. I would like you to actually set foot in my classroom and teach my class. Damn sure you will not last a day in my classroom. All the planning and all the discipline and all the issues that I have to deal with. I have students that go home that have no bed to sleep in, no electricity, no food. They come to my school and it's like a saving grace for them. They love being in school because they know they get 2 meals a day and they have adults that care about them, despite all the stuff that they bring home from school. I don't care. From home. So my job as a teacher is to inspire, as a science teacher, especially. But the point I'm trying to make is I would love for you to set foot in my classroom, take over my job for even just one day, and I'm pretty sure you won't even last because you would not be able to handle the responsibilities and what it takes to be a teacher, period.
I thank you for your work. I really respect the work that you're doing.
There's nothing I could really add to that.
The problem is I would like a different sign because I really feel like this is not enough. Not enough. I need a different sign.
Well, we just believe and don't
Just go blank yourself.
Similarly, recently the budget director at a press conference said that they were going to take away all funds to assure healthy school lunches. Sometimes this is the only opportunity for kids to get any nutrition at all. And this was a Michelle Obama initiative, and it seems to be intent of this administration to remove everything the Obamas did. The budget director at the time actually had the nerve to say there was no proven research between serving healthy lunches and academic performance, therefore they're not doing this. That alone can be refuted, but what are we going to feed them, as Michelle responded, crap, and until they get chronic disease and then take away their insurance? What are you going to do about things like this, Mr. Messer?
Messer's office does not have a specific response on school lunches, but I would just emphasize once again the importance of these 529 savings accounts. That would probably be the best way to fund a healthy lunch.
With what money?
With what money? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, the proposals these folks are offering is like, you know, make bricks with no straw, you know, feed kids with no money, take away SNAP, take away health care. I mean, it's absurd. It seems like there's a war going on middle class and working people, that our freedoms and our basic standard of living is under assault, and that people like you guys in this room tonight need to be talking to your friends and neighbors, your family. You all probably got a Trumpy or two stuck there somewhere in your family. I do. Talk to your friends and neighbors, your family. Write letters to the editor.
Come to our meetings.
March. Come to our indivisible meetings. There's indivisible meetings all over the 6th district. There's a group in Muncie, there's a group in Columbus, there's a group in Shelbyville, missing somebody. There's
Richmond.
Wayne County here in Richmond. There's one other one, and I can't remember which it is right now, but there's 5 here in the 6th district. And people really need to get involved and be active. Before Trump got elected, I was just sort of kicked back enjoying my retirement. When Trump got elected, it was like an earthquake happened. And I knew I had to get involved. Yes, that's part of my little wrap up here. I guess, yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say, are you sure that you want Luke Messer to find out how well you're doing here tonight? Because he may be wanting you to come to work for him.
That would never happen.
You know, we probably need to wrap this up fairly soon unless somebody's got a question they really want to ask that they haven't had a chance. There's 2 of them back there.
I don't have a question. So my name is April. I'm one of the facilitators of the Indivisible group. But I would love to give the 2 of you a round and the group that put this together.
Thank you, guys. That was really... Yes, ma'am, you had a
Well, I
question.
just wanted to ask, I just heard today that Trump is now thinking he's going to pull out of the Paris Climate Treaty.
Oh, I have an answer for that.
And, I also have to support the environment, but I also want to point out this is a global agreement, and European and most leaders around the world are supporting this agreement, and if we pull out, it's going to make us look bad to the rest of the world. We're no longer going to be the leader in the world, you know. And So how does, what do you think about that?
According to the International Energy Agency, the rest of the world will increase its carbon dioxide emissions by more than 6 times the amount by which U.S. emissions will be decreased. It doesn't make sense to place ankle weights on the U.S. economy with the burdensome cost of these regulations when they won't even have their desired impact. And I heard some of you have been referencing more recent science, and I just want to say that I think it's better to stick with older science. Hear me out. Okay. Older science might be better science in that it's less subject to shifting political winds.
Exactly.
That's why coal is reliable.
That's why we have the worst air in the country. Yes,
I
ma'am.
have another follow-up quote from the International Energy Agency. They say failure to act swiftly to shift energy sources away from fossil fuels will only increase costs further down the line, and that more jobs will be created than lost in shifting away from fossil fuel.
Is that from the Chamber of Commerce? Okay, well, when I read reports from the International Energy Agency, I like it to be filtered through the Chamber of Commerce.
You know, the truth of that, and I want to get to you, but the truth of that is that there's already more jobs in wind than there are in the coal industry. There's already more jobs in solar than there are in the coal industry, and those two are growing. What did she say? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
There's more jobs at Arby's than there are at the
There probably are, and they're safer. Okay.
China's doing gangbusters. They're going to surpass us if we don't look at
China and India are both going gangbusters. I think it was China that recently had a massive solar project and were able to cancel like 45 coal-fired plants that they had been planning to bring online. We could do that. We could do that if our governmental policies shifted to support alternative energies. But it does help to be, it's helped me personally to be involved in a group like this, because I was feeling pretty helpless after that election, like, sort of wringing my hands and shaking my head. Having an organization that sort of helped give me a voice was real valuable to me. And I think if you don't have that, you really might want to check it out.
I believe there is a text messaging group. I think that it's called Resist. I'm not sure the number, but I'm sure you can find it on Google. And you can, it will send you automated messages and give you lists of things that you can put down that you are concerned about, and it will send it to your representatives via email, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Also there's apps. There's an app called Countable.
Yes.
That you can sign up for. It tracks the legislation. You sign up for that, and it will tell you how your members of Congress voted, and you can email them directly from there.
Countable.
Countable.
On your phone.
What did I say?
It's just on your phone. If you look for apps, it's
Yes.
Countable.
Yeah.
And they actually tell you what's going on in Congress. They ask you, are you for or against it? You vote, and then you can send a message directly to your representative. It's a really easy tool. Countable, and it's an app.
And you do, and the members of Congress do get that, because I do get the responses, hello, I got your response, I'll answer you soon.
I'd kind of like to wrap this up by posing the question represented by this little sign here. It seems to me like we in the 6th District here in Indiana have an opportunity to sort of bear witness to the kind of representative Luke Messer has been. He wants to be our next United States Senator. So I guess the question is, do we in the 6th District really want Luke Messer representing us?
No.
Yeah, what'd you say?
No.
Okay. This is all being taped. He's going to get a copy of it. Even though he refused
I've been tweeting his Twitter handle all night to every question that has been asked.
Even though he refused to come here and hear our questions, I hope he hears them when we send him the tape.
And we're going to make this go viral on YouTube.
Thank you all so much for being here.
Town Hall, and I'm also a new citizen in America, so look out, I'm going to vote.
When did you officially become a citizen?
About a month ago. I've lived here for 35 years on a green card, but I got scared, so now I'm a citizen.